there's a lot of theologians out there who would say, once you understand what, the antitype or what the symbol is pointing to, the symbol itself doesn't have any inherent value or significance. So people will say, well, the sacrifices were just to sort of an object lesson about atonement or something, and that they didn't do anything else, and that's why they're never coming back. Even the Old Testament law, all of this just points to Jesus, and once you get Jesus, you can chuck it all. You don't need it anymore. And they'll use passages like when Paul talks about being under a tutor and so forth, a pedagogue, to make this a little more timely. They'll say that the land of Israel is only, like in the Bible, to teach us about a heavenly reality or a spiritual reality. And now that we know about that, we don't need Jewish people, and we don't need the nation of Israel. We don't need the land of Israel. Where have these people gone wrong?
Well, they're not reading the Bible very well, because God does not destroy the type when he brings the antitype, which is the fulfillment of the type. When God comes to Abraham, he gives him basically two promises. One is that you're going to have sons, despite the fact that when he first came to him, he was 75 years old, and his wife was well past menopause. Biologically, naturally, this was impossible. Of course, he never fulfills that promise till about 25 years later. And Abraham's waiting all that time. But it does come true. He does have a son miraculously, and then he has sons eventually, descendants as many as the stars in the sky. And the second promise is, I'm going to give you a land. And this promise about the land, I've counted them, is repeated 1,000 times in what Christians call the Old Testament, what Jews call Tanakh. 1,000 times it's repeated. Now, I was taught by my graduate school professors that Jesus and Paul don't believe in the land promise. And I remember the day when I was reading Acts chapter 13 and verse 19 just jumped off the page at me. The story is about Paul in Antioch of Pisidia, which is now Turkey. And Paul is speaking in a synagogue, and he says to his fellow Jews, he's recounting the history of redemption. And he says, after destroying 7 nations in the land of Canaan, now Paul doesn't seem to be embarrassed by the conquest, as most modern Christians are, very embarrassed. I didn't say this is one of the worst things in the Bible. Paul doesn't seem to think that way at all. After destroying 7 nations in the land of Canaan, God gave them their land as an inheritance. I go, whoa, I thought Paul had rejected the land promise. He did not reject the land promise, not according to Luke, the author of Acts. No, he fully embraces it.
Yeah.
And so did Jesus, and I give evidence for that in some of my previous books, and in this book too. So faith in the land promise is a New Testament faith. It's not just an Old Testament faith for your Christian listeners. It's all over the New Testament, in fact, and that's been a thesis of several of my books. And the reason why we haven't seen it is because we've been taught not to see it.
Yeah.